Hyo was a quiet young woman who lived in a small town where everyone knew each other. She had always been gentle in nature, the kind of person who preferred listening rather than talking. But deep inside, she carried a small fire that many people never noticed. Growing up, she had faced moments where she felt ignored, underestimated, or treated as if she was too fragile to stand up for herself. These memories stayed with her, and though she never spoke about them, they shaped her decision one day to do something bold. That bold decision was joining a karate class. The karate school was run by a man named Sensei Tanaka, a calm and disciplined instructor who had trained for years in martial arts. His school wasn't very big. It was in a modest building with wooden floors and mirrors along one side. The walls were decorated with posters about discipline, respect, and courage. For Maya, walking into that place for the first time felt both exciting and intimidating. She could hear the sharp sounds of students practicing their moves, the stomps of their feet, and the loud kiais that echoed through the hall. On her very first day, Maya wore a simple white uniform, her belt tied loosely because she was still learning how to do it properly. She stood at the back of the line watching everyone. Some students looked strong and confident. Others, like her, were beginners still trying to understand how to stand straight or throw a basic punch. Among the students was Daniel, a tall and muscular man with a black belt around his waist. He had been training for many years, and everyone in the class respected his skill. But Daniel also had a different side to him. He enjoyed showing off his strength, sometimes a little too much. He liked being the center of attention and often made beginners feel nervous when they had to spar with him. He wasn't unkind at heart, but he had a habit of treating martial arts as a game rather than a path of discipline. When Maya first noticed Daniel, she could tell that he carried himself with confidence, almost like he was untouchable. He laughed loudly with his friends, and when the instructor wasn't looking, he sometimes tried small tricks on new students to see how they would react. Despite this, Maya didn't let herself get distracted. She wasn't there to compare herself with others. She wasn't there to win trophies or prove anything to the world. She had joined the class for herself, to gain inner strength, to learn self-control, and to feel that no matter what situation she faced in life, she could handle it. During the warm-up, Maya struggled a little. Her arms and legs weren't used to the stretches and exercises. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead, and her breathing grew heavy. Daniel, on the other hand, moved with ease. He stretched like it was second nature, his body well trained from years of practice. Some students looked at him with admiration, wishing they could be like him. Maya saw him too, but instead of envy, she felt something else, a quiet determination, that one day she would be confident in her own way. When the training session began, Sensei Tanaka taught them basic stances and punches. His voice was steady and patient, reminding everyone that karate was not just about fighting, but about discipline, respect, and self-control. He often said, "Karate begins and ends with respect." Maya listened carefully, repeating each movement, with focus. She wasn't fast and she wasn't perfect, but she was present. Every mistake she made, she corrected slowly, her mind absorbing the lessons like a sponge. After class, Daniel walked past her with his friends. He gave her a quick glance and smirked. "First day? Don't worry, you'll get used to it," he said casually. His tone wasn't unkind, but it carried a sense of superiority, as if he already knew she would never reach his level. Maya simply nodded and smiled politely. She didn't need to prove anything that day. She was just beginning her journey. As weeks passed, Maya returned to the dojo again and again. Her body grew stronger, her steps more balanced, her punches sharper. She learned how to block, how to move quickly, and most importantly, how to remain calm under pressure. Sometimes she still felt nervous when sparring, especially when paired with stronger students, but she never gave up. Each day she reminded herself why she was there. Daniel, on the other hand, continued to be the star of the class. His speed and power were undeniable, but his playful attitude sometimes worried Sensei Tanaka. He noticed Daniel using more force than necessary, especially against beginners. He reminded him, "Strength without respect is weakness in disguise." Daniel nodded but didn't fully take the lesson to heart. One particular evening, when the class was smaller than usual, Maya and Daniel happened to stand near each other. They were practicing holds and escapes, something new for Maya. She felt nervous, unsure if she could keep up. Daniel, confident as always, stepped in to demonstrate with her. At first, he guided her, showing her the basics. But then, just for fun, he applied a little more pressure than needed. He laughed lightly as if it were nothing serious, but Maya felt the discomfort. Still, she didn't panic. She remembered Sensei's words. The mind must stay calm even when the body feels pressure. With patience, she tried to follow the technique she had learned. Daniel released her after a moment, laughing it off, while the others simply moved on. For Maya, though, that small moment stayed in her mind. She thought about it later that night. It wasn't anger she felt. It wasn't fear either. It was something else. An awareness that one day she would need to show that karate was not a game. It was a discipline, and respect was its strongest foundation. That was how Maya's journey in karate truly began. Quietly, patiently, and with determination, she stepped deeper into a world where strength wasn't measured by muscle, but by control, humility, and the courage to stand with dignity. Little did she know, the same dojo that made her nervous on the first day would soon become the place where she discovered her true power. And the same person who once treated her lightly would one day realize that even the quietest student can carry the loudest lesson. Maya's journey in karate continued steadily. Every week she grew more confident in her steps, her stances became firmer, and her punches carried more strength. Yet, despite her improvement, there was always a lingering challenge that kept testing her: the presence of Daniel. Daniel was not a bad person, but his way of training often felt careless. He liked to laugh, show his power, and make light jokes during practice. Many students admired him, but some also felt uneasy when paired with him. He had the kind of personality that made others notice him instantly. His loud voice, his quick movements, and the way he could dominate any sparring match made him seem larger than life. For Maya, he was both a challenge and a teacher, though not in the traditional sense. One evening, the dojo was buzzing with energy. The students lined up, bows were exchanged, and training began. Sensei Tanaka instructed everyone to practice defense against holds. This was new territory for Maya, and she felt nervous. She had only recently become comfortable with basic kicks and punches, but now she had to learn how to stay calm when someone tried to hold her down or trap her. As pairs were chosen, Maya found herself standing near Daniel once again. Sensei assigned them to work together. Maya's heart skipped for a moment. She respected Daniel's skill, but she also knew he sometimes treated practice like a game. She told herself to focus, to remember everything she had been taught. At first, the training went smoothly. Daniel explained the steps to her, showing how to block his arm and step aside. But soon, his playful side emerged. Instead of following the instructions carefully, he tightened his hold around her shoulders, pretending to act serious. His laughter filled the air as he said, "Can you get out of this one?" The other students glanced over, some smiling awkwardly, others pretending not to notice. Maya felt the pressure, but instead of struggling wildly, she closed her eyes for a brief second and recalled Sensei's words. "Do not fight the force with panic. Flow with it, and you will find the way." With that in mind, she shifted her weight, tried the movement she had practiced earlier, and managed to free herself, though not perfectly. Daniel loosened his grip, still laughing, but Maya simply bowed, her head politely, and returned to her stance. She didn't speak back, nor did she show frustration. Inside, however, she knew this was a test of patience and focus. After class, some of the students whispered about what had happened. A few admired Maya's calmness, while others shook their heads at Daniel's behavior. Sensei Tanaka, though silent, had been watching closely. He called Daniel aside after training. The two spoke quietly near the corner of the dojo. No one knew exactly what was said, but Daniel returned looking thoughtful. He didn't joke as much after that, though his habit of showing off didn't vanish completely. For Maya, That moment planted a seed. She realized that martial arts weren't just about techniques or winning a match. They were also about handling uncomfortable situations with grace. Daniel's strength didn't intimidate her anymore. Instead, it motivated her to keep improving. She wanted to master herself, not others. Weeks passed and the training grew more intense. Maya's body began to change. Her movements became quicker, her balance stronger. The once clumsy beginner who struggled to tie her belt properly was now someone who moved with quiet determination. The students started to notice her progress. She wasn't loud, she wasn't the fastest, but her focus was steady. Daniel noticed too, though he never admitted it. Each time he sparred with her, he had to put in just a little more effort than before. At first he brushed it off, telling himself she was just lucky. But deep inside he could see that Maya was becoming someone who trained with real purpose. One Saturday afternoon, the dojo organized a small friendly tournament for its students. It wasn't official or grand, but it gave everyone a chance to test their skills in front of family and friends. Maya hesitated to join, but Sensei encouraged her. "Competition is not about winning," he said gently. "It is about testing your spirit." On the day of the event, the dojo was filled with excitement. Mats were laid out neatly, chairs lined the walls for visitors, and banners about respect and courage hung proudly. Maya felt nervous as she put on her uniform. She could see her classmates, stretching, Daniel among them, looking relaxed as always. He gave her a small nod, almost like a challenge. When her name was called, Maya stepped onto the mat. Her opponent was another beginner, and though Maya's hands trembled at first, she focused on her breathing and remembered her training. Each block, each step, each strike, she did them with care. She didn't win the match, but she didn't lose badly either. She held her ground, and when it was over, she bowed deeply, feeling a quiet pride in herself. Daniel's matches, on the other hand, drew the most attention. His power was undeniable, and he won quickly. The audience clapped loudly, impressed by his speed and confidence. But Sensei, observing from the side, noticed something different. Daniel's victories were fast, but they lacked patience. He fought to dominate, not to learn. At the end of the tournament, Sensei gathered everyone. He praised the students for their hard work and reminded them of the true spirit of karate. "Victory is not always shown on the scoreboard," he said. "Sometimes it is found in the courage to step forward, even when you are afraid." Those words stayed with Maya long after the event ended. She hadn't won, but she felt stronger than ever. She realized that every challenge she faced in the dojo, whether it was Daniel's roughness or her own doubts, was shaping her into someone different. One evening after class, as everyone was packing up, Daniel approached Maya. For the first time, his tone was not playful but curious. "You're improving," he said almost reluctantly. "Didn't think you'd last this long when you first joined." Maya smiled softly. "I didn't join to quit," she replied. Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. Daniel looked at her for a moment, then gave a short nod before walking away. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of a silent acknowledgement between them. He might still underestimate her, but deep inside, he was starting to realize she was not someone to take lightly. What Maya didn't know was that this silent shift would soon lead to a moment that would test everything she had learned. The small challenges of the past were only preparing her for a day when she would need every ounce of strength, discipline, and courage. That day was coming, and when it arrived, both she and Daniel would discover what true respect in martial arts really meant. The weeks turned into months, and Maya's progress in karate became more visible to everyone around her. She was no longer the quiet beginner standing uncertainly at the back of the line. She moved with better balance. Her eyes stayed focused during drills, and her body had grown stronger. Yet her calmness and humility never changed. She trained in silence, never boasting, never comparing herself with others. Daniel, on the other hand, still held the reputation of being the strongest student in the dojo. His black belt made him respected, but his playful attitude sometimes annoyed the instructor. He liked to test people, often applying more pressure than necessary, making others struggle just so he could laugh about it later. To him, sparring was more like entertainment than practice. Sensei Tanaka often reminded the class, martial arts is not about defeating others, it is about defeating the ego inside you. Some students took those words to heart, but Daniel often nodded politely and went back to his usual ways. He had confidence, yes, but sometimes that confidence blinded him. One evening, Sensei announced that the students would practice controlled sparring in pairs. The room grew lively with excitement and nervousness. Sparring was where people tested themselves, where training met real challenge. Everyone looked around, wondering who their partner would be. When Sensei called out names, Maya's heart skipped. "Maya and Daniel," he said firmly. The class fell silent for a moment. Some students exchanged curious glances because they knew Daniel's habit of overpowering others and Maya's quiet nature. It seemed like a mismatch. Maya tied her belt tighter and stepped onto the mat. She bowed respectfully, her expression calm but serious. Daniel smirked slightly as if this would be easy for him. He bowed too, though his body language showed confidence that bordered on carelessness. The sparring began. Daniel moved quickly, circling her with ease. His steps were light, his eyes sharp, but his mind seemed more focused on showing off than respecting his opponent. Maya stayed in her stance, breathing steadily, her eyes following his every movement. He struck first, a fast punch aimed toward her shoulder. Maya blocked it, not perfectly, but enough to deflect the force. Daniel chuckled lightly. "Not bad," he said, almost playfully. He attacked again, this time with more speed. Maya stepped back, blocking and retreating, her focus unbroken. The class watched silently. Some expected Maya to be overwhelmed soon, but as the minutes passed, something unexpected happened. Daniel grew more aggressive, throwing faster strikes, trying to trap her. Yet, each time Maya either blocked, sidestepped, or absorbed the pressure without losing her calm. Daniel frowned slightly. He wasn't used to opponents lasting this long without panicking. He decided to increase the intensity, moving in closer, testing her reactions. At one point, he tried to grab her arm and apply a simple hold, something he often did for fun with beginners. But this time, Maya was ready. She remembered the uncomfortable moment weeks ago when he had tightened a hold around her, laughing. She remembered how she had stayed calm and tried to use technique instead of fear, and now with better training her body responded almost naturally. As Daniel reached for her, Maya shifted her weight, stepped aside smoothly, and locked his arm in a counter movement. The room gasped quietly. Daniel tried to pull away, but Maya had positioned herself correctly. For the first time, he felt resistance he couldn't brush off. Daniel's eyes widened. He tried to twist out of it using his strength, but the more he struggled, the tighter the technique became. Within seconds, his playful smirk disappeared. His body tensed, and a strained sound escaped his lips. "Hey, wait," he muttered, suddenly realizing he was caught. The class stared in surprise. No one had expected the quiet Maya to trap the dojo's strongest student. Maya herself wasn't smiling or proud. Her face remained calm. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was only applying what she had learned: control, precision, and focus. Daniel, however, felt his pride cracking. He had underestimated her, treated the match like a game, and now he was the one struggling. His earlier confidence turned into discomfort as he realized he had no easy way out. Finally, Sensei Tanaka clapped his hands. "Enough." Maya immediately released the hold and stepped back, bowing respectfully. Daniel straightened slowly, rubbing his arm, his face a mixture of shock and embarrassment. The class remained silent for a few moments, unsure how to react. Then quietly, a few students began to clap. Soon the whole room filled with the sound of applause, not because Maya had defeated Daniel, but because she had shown the true spirit of karate. Sensei Tanaka spoke firmly. "This is the lesson. Technique and calm mind will always overcome careless strength. Let this be a reminder to everyone. Respect your opponent no matter who they are." Maya bowed again, her face humble, while Daniel lowered his head, realizing the truth in Sensei's words. For the first time, he felt what it meant to be on the other side of his own playful behavior. After class, Daniel stayed behind longer than usual. He sat quietly in the corner, replaying the moment in his mind. His pride was hurt, but deep down he also felt respect for Maya. She hadn't mocked him, hadn't boasted, hadn't even smiled when she had trapped him. She had simply shown discipline. That silence spoke louder than any words. Maya, meanwhile, walked home that night with a strange feeling. She wasn't celebrating or feeling superior. Instead, she felt grateful. Grateful that her patience, her quiet training, and her refusal to give up had brought her to that moment. It wasn't about beating Daniel. It was about proving to herself that she could stand strong without losing her calm. The incident quickly became the talk of the dojo. Students whispered about how Maya had caught Daniel off guard. Some were inspired, especially the beginners who often felt intimidated. They realized now that karate wasn't about who looked stronger, but about who practiced with heart and focus. Daniel, though embarrassed, began to change after that day. He still trained hard, but the playful arrogance in his attitude softened. He spoke less during class, listened more to Sensei, and treated his sparring partners with more respect. The lesson had stung, but it was exactly what he needed. For Maya, this was just another step in her journey. She didn't see it as a victory over Daniel, but as proof that true power lies in discipline and respect. What she didn't realize, however, was that this moment was only the beginning. There were more challenges ahead, moments that would test not only her body but also her spirit in ways she had never imagined. And for Daniel, the memory of that sparring match would stay with him forever. Every time he tied his black belt, he would remember the quiet beginner who had once humbled him, teaching him a lesson he could never forget. The dojo felt different after that sparring session between Maya and Daniel. The students began to look at Maya with new eyes. She was no longer seen as the shy beginner who quietly stood at the back. Instead, she became someone others respected, someone who reminded everyone of what true discipline could achieve. Maya herself did not change much outwardly. She still trained with the same calmness, still bowed with the same humility, and still preferred silence over unnecessary words. But deep inside, she felt stronger. That moment against Daniel had given her confidence, not to boast or show off, but to believe that her steady efforts were paying off. Daniel, on the other hand, was going through his own transformation. At first, he struggled with embarrassment. For years, he had been admired as the strongest in the class. But in a matter of seconds, Maya had shown him that strength without control could collapse easily. For several days, he avoided eye contact with her, keeping his distance. Yet the memory of that day stayed with him, not as anger but as a lesson. Sensei Tanaka noticed these changes. He knew that both Maya and Daniel had reached a turning point in their journeys. He believed that martial arts wasn't just about techniques. It was about shaping character. And now both of them were walking new paths, though in very different ways. Training became more intense as the weeks passed. The class prepared for an upcoming demonstration at a community event. This was not a competition, but a way to show people what karate truly represented: respect, control, and courage. Sensei divided the students into groups, assigning each one a role in the performance. To everyone's surprise, he paired Maya and Daniel together for one of the main demonstrations. When their names were announced, the dojo grew quiet for a moment. Some students looked curious, others a little worried. Everyone still remembered what had happened during their sparring. Would Daniel take this seriously? Would Maya be comfortable working with him? Maya simply bowed in acceptance, her face calm as always. Daniel nodded too, though inside he felt uneasy. He knew he could not treat this lightly. This was his chance to show that he had learned from his mistakes. Their practice sessions began the following week. At first, the atmosphere between them was stiff. Daniel spoke less than usual, giving short instructions when needed. Maya followed calmly, focusing on the techniques rather than the silence between them. They practiced throws, counters, and locks, making sure their movements were sharp but safe. One evening during a break, Daniel finally spoke more openly. "You know," he said quietly, "the other day when we sparred, I didn't expect that. I underestimated you." Maya looked at him, her expression gentle. "It wasn't about me," she replied softly. "It was about the training. Anyone who practices with focus can improve." Daniel nodded, his face serious. "Still, I needed that lesson. I used to think strength was enough, but you showed me it's not." For the first time, Maya saw a different side of him, a side that was thoughtful and humble. From that day, their practice became smoother. Daniel stopped trying to prove himself and instead worked with Maya as a true partner. Slowly, a sense of respect grew between them. As the demonstration day approached, excitement filled the dojo. Students practiced tirelessly, repeating their moves until they felt natural. Families were invited, and the hall where the event would take place was decorated with banners that read words like respect, discipline, and courage. On the morning of the event, Maya stood quietly in her uniform, her belt tied neatly. She felt nervous, but not fearful. She reminded herself of why she had joined karate in the first place, to find strength within herself. Daniel stood nearby, stretching in silence. When their names were called to perform, they stepped onto the mat together. The hall grew silent as the two faced each other. Their demonstration began slowly, showing basic stances and blocks. Then, with perfect timing, they moved into a sequence of attacks and counters. Daniel played the role of the aggressor, while Maya demonstrated her defense and control. At one point, she executed the same technique she had once used during sparring, locking Daniel's arm skillfully. This time, however, there was no laughter, no struggle, no embarrassment. Daniel submitted smoothly, bowing his head in respect. While the audience clapped in appreciation, the performance ended with both of them bowing deeply to each other and then to the crowd. The applause was loud and warm, filling the hall with energy. For Maya, it was not the sound of victory, but of acknowledgement that discipline and patience were seen and respected. For Daniel, it was a moment of redemption. He had shown humility, and in return he gained genuine respect from others, not just admiration for his strength. After the event, many people came to congratulate them. Some parents told Maya how inspiring she was, especially for the younger students. Daniel, too, received praise, but this time he accepted it with quiet humility rather than pride. As the weeks went on, their relationship as training partners grew stronger. They were not close friends in the usual sense, but there was a bond of respect between them. Daniel began helping beginners more patiently, remembering how he had once treated them. Maya continued her steady progress, always focused, always calm. One evening, as the class ended, Sensei Tanaka gathered everyone. His voice was steady but filled with pride. "Each of you has grown," he said. "But growth does not come from victory alone. It comes from humility, respect, and courage. Remember, karate is not about being better than someone else. It is about being better than who you were yesterday." Those words settled deeply in Maya's heart. She realized that her journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new lessons, and new opportunities to grow. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly ready to face them. Daniel, too, took those words to heart. He had always been strong, but now he understood the importance of self-control and respect. He no longer wanted to be feared or admired for his power. He wanted to be respected for his character. The dojo, once a place of nervousness for Maya, had now become a second home. Every time she stepped onto the mat, she felt a quiet confidence, a sense of belonging. And though her journey had begun with doubt and hesitation, it had now turned into a story of growth, discipline, and the power of respect. What no one knew at that time was that both Maya and Daniel still had more lessons to face. Their story was not finished yet. The dojo had taught them much, but life always had a way of testing lessons outside the mat. The day would come when both of them would be challenged in ways they could not yet imagine. And when that day arrived, everything they had learned would guide them toward discovering the true meaning of strength. Months had passed since the demonstration, but its memory still lingered in the dojo. For Maya, it was not just a performance, it was proof of how far she had come. She had walked into the dojo as a nervous beginner, unsure if she even belonged. Now she stood with quiet confidence, a student who had not only gained skill but also respect. Daniel, too, had changed. The playful arrogance that once defined him had softened. He still carried strength and speed, but now he used them differently. Instead of trying to intimidate beginners, he helped them. Instead of showing off during sparring, he focused on control. Some students even began to approach him for advice, and he gave it with patience, remembering how he himself had once been humbled. One evening, after class ended, Sensei Tanaka gathered the students. His eyes swept across the room as he spoke. Karate is not just for the dojo, it is for life. The discipline you practice here, the respect you show here, it must also live in your actions outside these walls. His words carried weight, reminding everyone that martial arts were not about titles or belts but about character. Maya took these words to heart. She noticed small changes in herself outside the dojo. She no longer avoided challenges at work or in daily life. When problems arose, she faced them calmly, much like she did during sparring. Her family and friends began to notice the difference too. She carried herself with quiet strength, not loud, but steady. Daniel's transformation was also clear. He apologized to a few students he had once teased and even admitted his mistakes. Many were surprised by his honesty, but it only made them respect him more. For the first time, Daniel wasn't admired for his strength alone. He was respected for his humility. One day, an opportunity came that tested both Maya and Daniel in a new way. The dojo was invited to participate in a regional event where different schools would come together to share demonstrations and sparring exhibitions. This time, the event was bigger than the local one they had done before. Hundreds of people would be watching, and many skilled martial artists would be present. Sensei Tanaka selected a group of students to represent the dojo. Naturally, Maya and Daniel were chosen again as partners for a key demonstration. When they heard the news, both felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Maya reminded herself that it wasn't about winning or proving anything. It was about showing respect and discipline. Daniel, meanwhile, silently promised himself that he would give his best, not to show off, but to honor the dojo. The weeks leading up to the event were filled with practice. Maya and Daniel trained together almost every evening. They rehearsed each movement carefully, making sure their timing matched perfectly. Daniel often adjusted his strength, ensuring Maya could showcase her skills without being overshadowed. Maya, in turn, trusted Daniel's guidance, knowing that he was now treating their partnership with sincerity. During these sessions, a quiet bond grew between them. They didn't talk much about personal lives, but there was a deep understanding. They had seen each other at their weakest, Maya as the shy beginner, Daniel as the overconfident fighter. Now they saw each other at their strongest, not because of power, but because of respect. The day of the event arrived. The large hall was buzzing with excitement. Different schools displayed banners, and students from all over the region walked around in crisp uniforms. Maya stood among her teammates, feeling her heart beat faster than usual. She glanced at Daniel, who gave her a firm nod. For once, his expression carried no arrogance, only focus. When their turn came, Maya and Daniel stepped onto the mat. The lights shone brightly, the audience grew quiet, and the two bowed deeply to each other. The demonstration began. Daniel attacked with speed and strength, his movements sharp and precise. Maya responded with calm blocks, sidesteps, and counters. Together they created a flow that looked almost like a dance, power meeting control, strength meeting patience. At one point, Maya once again executed the lock that had once humbled Daniel, but this time it was part of their practiced routine, and Daniel submitted smoothly, showing the audience the beauty of technique over brute force. The crowd applauded, loudly, impressed by the harmony between them. Even students from other schools nodded in appreciation. Sensei Tanaka watched with pride. His students had not only performed well, but had also embodied the true spirit of karate. After the event, several instructors from other schools approached Sensei to compliment Maya and Daniel's performance. Some even praised Maya specifically, saying her calmness and focus reminded them of experienced martial artists. Maya felt humbled by the words but didn't let them go to her head. She knew she was still learning, still growing. That evening, as they returned to their own dojo, the students celebrated together. Laughter filled the room as everyone shared their experiences. Daniel, sitting quietly for a moment, finally turned to Maya. "You know," he said slowly, "when you first joined, I thought you wouldn't last. I thought karate was only for people like me. Loud, strong, confident. But you've shown me something I didn't understand before. Real strength. It's quiet, it's patient, it's respectful." Maya smiled softly, her eyes warm. "And you've shown me something too," she replied. "That even if someone makes mistakes, they can change. Respect goes both ways." Daniel nodded, and for the first time, there was no wall between them. Not of arrogance, not of doubt, just mutual respect. As time went on, both Maya and Daniel continued to train. They faced new challenges, new techniques, and even new students who looked up to them. Maya became an example for the beginners, especially those who felt nervous or unsure. They saw in her a reminder that strength wasn't about size or volume. It was about heart and persistence. Daniel, meanwhile, became a mentor figure, guiding others with patience, no longer the intimidating fighter he once was. The dojo itself grew stronger because of these changes. It was no longer just a place of practice, but a community where every student, no matter their level, felt respected. Sensei Tanaka often smiled quietly as he watched his students bow to each other with genuine respect, knowing that his lessons had taken root. For Maya, karate was no longer just a hobby. It had become a way of life, shaping the way she thought, spoke, and carried herself. She had started as a young woman searching for confidence, but she had found much more. She had found discipline, self-respect, and the courage to stand tall without losing her gentleness. For Daniel, karate had always been about strength, but now he understood its deeper meaning. He had once sought attention through power, but now he sought growth through humility. And in that change, he found a strength far greater than muscle. Their journey together was not about one defeating the other. It was about both of them discovering that respect is the foundation of true martial arts. And though their paths might one day lead in different directions, they would always carry the lessons they had learned together. In the end, the dojo was more than just a hall with wooden floors and mirrors. It was a place where lives were shaped, where respect defeated arrogance, and where two very different students taught each other the greatest lesson of all, that true power is not in overpowering others, but in controlling oneself. And so the story of Maya and Daniel became a quiet inspiration within the dojo. Every new student who walked in heard about the day a humble beginner had taught a black belt the meaning of respect. Not as gossip, not as mockery, but as a lesson that no one should ever be underestimated, and that martial arts was never about fun at someone else's expense. It was about honor, patience, and respect, the very things that both Maya and Daniel had finally come to understand.